Welcome back, everybody, to yet another episode of An Involved Review. I'm your host, James Caleb Kitchens, and as always, I'm joined by none other than Caleb Stovall, straight from the SWN. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's going on, man? And I got some new merch for you.
I see that you're rocking the MLW merch, the hat, the shirt.
Yeah.
I'm rocking the Owen Hart Dark Side of the Ring. We're repping all the brands in here tonight, and as a matter of fact, speaking of Dark Side of the Ring, stick around. We are going to be reviewing the Bruiser Bedlam / Johnny K9 episode. We are a little behind, but we'll get caught up sooner or later. It's a schedules thing, and we're gonna cover everything. So just sit tight.
Yeah, we do have lives outside of all this wrestling.
That's right.
Contrary to
Multiple.
popular belief.
Yeah. Some of us multiple ones. I've got the shoot job and running a wrestling company. So
Yeah.
there's a lot to that. That being said, before we get into it, I do want to mention that the views on the audio, we've been pretty steady on our video podcast, but the views on the audio are going up and up and up. So you can find us all over the place, guys. Google Podcasts,
Spotify.
Stitcher, Spotify. I want to pay special mention to because Spotify is actually about to start doing video broadcasts, and I actually today signed us up for the pilot program for that, so we could be one of the first wrestling podcasts to be on there.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so
That's awesome.
so that's gonna be a cool thing. Spotify is really honestly, if you're gonna listen, I don't want to play favorites, but Spotify is tied in with Anchor, which is what I use to post our stuff. So you usually can find us first. Usually the podcast is up on YouTube first, and then so that honestly, if you want to get these as soon as we put them out, YouTube's the best place to follow us. But if you after that, it usually goes up on Spotify and Facebook pretty quickly, and then it kind of disseminates out to the other platforms. Um,
Awesome.
Speaking
Awesome.
of viewership and platforms and all that stuff, before we get into the episode, I don't want this to go unmentioned. We talked last week a little bit about SmackDown and Rampage. We're gonna go head to head this past Friday, and yeah, there was much conversation about this. But here's the thing: if you ask either side, and I put that in quotation marks, they say that they won, right? I mean, both sides are like, "Yeah, we won. Where it's important." And honestly, the WWE folks aren't really interested in it. Like, obviously, Vince McMahon gives a shit because they arranged for SmackDown to be commercial free.
Yeah. I was about to say, I mean, yeah, he kind of does.
But after all the to do about it, this is what it comes down to, um, and this gets a little complex here. So total viewership. So we're talking about the total number of people that watched either program total. Um, SmackDown 866,000, Rampage 578,000. Now, if you look at that number, you would immediately go, well, SmackDown wins, right? Um, but there is more to it than that, and I'm not taking AEW's side here by any means because we'll get into that in a minute. But AEW though for Rampage, that 578,000 is a 15% bump from the previous week. SmackDown, however, is a 60% decline. Now, SmackDown is normally on Fox. They were moved to FS1,
Right.
which is in far less homes than even TNT. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Fox is everywhere. It's literally everywhere.
Yes.
So that comes into play on it. Now, the 18 to 49 demo that they care so much about, it was really close, right? So they did 314,000 SmackDown, 313,000 Rampage. If you look at that in the 18 to 49 demo, it's like, well, they both did about the same. But if you look at the 10 p.m. hour where they overlapped, Rampage did 328,000 to SmackDown's 285,000. So if you look at the numbers, it's like there is reason for both people to say that they did well, but I think ultimately what this really says is there are not 5 million wrestling fans watching live wrestling on television anymore.
Well,
There's
and
just not.
again, but I brought this up, last week or last time on the podcast, I should say. Like, how many of these views also are taking into account, like, because I can tell you right now, I didn't watch it on cable. I didn't watch it live. I watched it on Hulu.
Right.
So it's like, are views on Hulu being counted? Are views on YouTube being counted? Are views on it, like that? That's why I say, I'm just like, I think that this ratings talk is the dumbest thing ever in this era, because we're no longer in that time period. It's not that you had one sets of channels basically, and you had to flip back and forth, and there was no other way to do it. But now it's like that shit doesn't matter anymore.
What really needs to happen ultimately? I mean, right now wrestling, both products are really heavily based around advertising revenue and TV deals and all this stuff, and I'm like, I really think that we need to move out of that era. I think that there needs to be a place to watch all of this AEW stuff live on a streaming service. And yeah, Hulu is that's an option for some, but I mean, HBO Max is the same company. It's Warner, right? There's no reason why they can't get that on there. And I think the library will be there eventually for AEW.
Oh, I have no doubt it will.
But I want to see the live shows on there, man. And I know that they probably can't do that live with their TNT audience, but if it's 2 days later, 3 days later, that's not going to draw a significant audience away from the broadcast. And if it does, once again, it's the same company. If it drives HBO Max subscriptions up, that's what they really want anyway.
Here's the thing, though. Then I don't know if you know this, but Dynamite's on right. Like it doesn't wait. It goes on right after it airs. It's up on Hulu on demand. So you can go and watch it right afterwards.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, that everybody wants to recreate that Monday Night War concept, and Eric Bischoff himself chimed in on this, and his message to Tony Khan was very straightforward. It was just shut the fuck up and wrestle. And what he meant by that was just put on your product. And yeah, it's interesting that Eric, of all people, would say something like that. But it's like he said, he was directly acknowledged by WWF. They were going head to head with him. He was putting the results out. They were running Monday every single day. Like, they were running right up against them. And it's like, if you want that kind of war with WWE, run in Raw's time slot, run in SmackDown's time slot, see how that goes for you. I don't think that there's any reason to do it.
No, but we wouldn't be having this discussion if WWE hadn't technically fired that first shot. They're the ones that put the extra 30 minutes up against Rampage.
That's true. They did. And I'm definitely not trying to say, that it's not Vince McMahon doing his normal shit, right? What I'm trying to say, though, is that there's no victory here, right? Like, AEW is not going to steal audience away from WWE's programming any more than they already are just by existing, right? Because they're putting on better television. When I watch Dynamite, and I do actually watch Dynamite, which is, I mean, that's the biggest, benefit that I can give to WWE, or I mean, to AEW, is that I sit down and watch Dynamite every week. I make a point to do it. I don't do that
for other wrestlings. I know you
do. I haven't watched an episode of Raw in fucking forever. I can't tell you the last time it's been, and I don't plan to do it in the near future either. I just don't like.
Yeah.
It's bad. So yeah, man, I don't know what else to tell you there. It's I make a point to watch Dynamite every week, and I think WWE does a good enough job of shooting themselves in the foot. And there are people that like it. Most of them are outside of that 18 to 40 night demo because most of the people watching WWE at this point are children or seniors. Um, and that's fine. I'm glad it's there. If somebody's enjoying it, by all means, like let it be on television. But I see Eric Bischoff's point here. I don't think making a huge deal about we're gonna beat um, SmackDown did Tony Khan any favors.
I mean, yeah. I didn't. I don't think it did him any favors. And can I be honest? Can I give credit to this person? I want to give credit to how I feel, which is what Myron posted on his Facebook. He posted a picture of a fan with a sign that just said "Screw ratings, just enjoy wrestling," or "Let me enjoy wrestling," or something like that. That's how I feel. I'm like, I don't care about all this rating stuff. I think it's amazing right now that there are two wrestling companies and that they're both in arenas, that there are places that, guys can go to work. But there's not only two companies right now, there's MLW. MLW's doing some great things as well. Like they're on Vice, and
Yeah.
Vice has one of the hottest shows of which we cover.
Yeah, and they're putting on MLW right afterwards, which is very smart.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. It's a good deal for MLW and stuff like that. And then also the NWA is doing pretty good as well. Game Changer Wrestling of all places is doing good business. I mean, they're about to sell out the Hammerstein Ballroom. Now, you have to be a pretty big deal in order to sell out the Hammerstein Ballroom. I know it's not that big, but still it's an expensive venue.
okay, I really don't give them a ton of credit for that because
There's
Game
a lot
Changer
of wrestling
Wrestling
history though in that place.
there is, but I mean that's ECW's home, and
Well,
it's
it is, but it's also become like the home of like it was at one time. Ring of Honor did a lot of shows there, had a lot of memorable shows there.
sure,
Um,
but Game Changer's not marketing to those people; they're marketing to the ECW folks.
oh well, of course, but hey, right now they're doing really good business. I mean
Yeah,
that I know that Moxley and Nick Gage pay per view did really good.
yeah.
Or did really good for what it was. I don't know, how great it did as far as numbers or anything, but it did pretty good as far as people were talking about it.
Speaking of the Rampage buy-in, yeah. I do want to talk about that for just a second, and I've kind of talked about this on this show before, and then we can kind of move on from there. But it's like maybe Minoru Suzuki isn't for everyone.
Oh, that match
Maybe
was awesome. I don't
okay,
care.
okay. Why? So there's a reason it was on YouTube though, and not on the show. And I think they're starting to realize that Suzuki is not for everybody. I mean, there is a small, I think, subset of the audience that's really into his stuff that maybe saw him back in the day. But I just don't think. I mean, I'm sure his match with Daniel Bryan was good. I've seen highlights. I haven't seen the whole match. But I'm sure his match with Henry was probably fantastic.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sure it was too. And Henry's
but
probably sore as fuck.
yeah, but his match with Moxley that they built up for forever was not good. It was okay at best. I just, I feel like maybe they're using him while he's here, and then he'll be gone. And I think that's probably good, right? And maybe that's why they got the Daniel Bryan match in there pretty quickly. But it's
Yeah.
just like I feel like they're putting a lot of spotlight on this dude that I don't feel like there's a ton of payoff for it. I feel like there's
Well,
maybe a small subset of the audience that likes him, and if you develop a fan base for him, then he's going to be gone and they're never going to see him again.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I know why they did the Moxley and Suzuki match because it was a really good match in New Japan that they had. They had two of them actually. They had two really good matches there. Um, and but that's New Japan. It doesn't. I have noticed that not everything translates as good unless it's with that product. Because remember, you didn't really have a problem with Kenny Omega when he was in New Japan, kind of thing,
Right.
because he worked with that style. He did. He hasn't necessarily worked. Although I think since Danielson and CM Punk have come in, I think he's doing fine as the heel champion.
He is doing well with that because they're being obnoxious, right? And a large portion of the audience already doesn't like them and thinks they're obnoxious. And I have to give we both talk a bit about Cornette's podcast every now and then on here, and I do have to give them credit. They are staying the hell away from this Roads to the Top show. And that's very wise because it's god awful.
Is it?
It's like the worst television. I mean, and it's not doing Cody and Brandy any favors unless they're trying to make them the biggest heels in the company, because every episode is just Brandy trying to insert herself into everything and then them just being obnoxious as shit. Like it's cringe. It's like Jersey Shore, but with Cody Rhodes and Cody and Randy Rhodes. I mean,
so Miz and Mrs. or what was
it's
it
worse
called?
than that. I've actually watched like a whole season of that.
I like the Miz though in those
Right.
shows.
Yeah. I mean, that as reality TV goes, those weren't too bad. But anyway, we're off on a tangent now. You did bring up Myron though, and I do want to say this. He's talking, of course, about Myron from our friends, the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. Myron actually was he made a post on his social media that he was in the hospital this past week. I don't want to go into why or anything. That's his business, but he is back home now and he is good to go. So our best wishes out to him, and we're glad that he's back home.
Absolutely.
And that being said, let's get into our subject matter tonight. We're
do
talking about, of course, a Dark Side of the Ring episode. And if you're watching this on video, you can see the background there. We're talking about the story of Johnny K9. This episode opens with a clip of him wrestling Sam Houston in 1987. And I've jotted that down because I'm glad that they opened with that clip, because I think that it kind of presents to people this guy who is wrestling Sam Houston, who we know of, right? And it's in '87. This is an old school wrestling match that we're seeing here. And if you didn't know anything about this story that's about to be told, you would just think, okay, well, this guy wrestled Sam Houston in 1987. They're having a wrestling match. Here we are. This is about a pro wrestler. And then the story just constantly gets more and more outlandish as the episode goes on.
Yes. This sounded like a Netflix made up special.
It kind of did, man, to be honest. And and one of the things that I noticed, and let me know if you felt this way too, is it's like I feel like they kind of hit the peak of like this shit's insane before the episode like got to the end, right? It's like when they blow up the police station, that's kind of the last straw. You're just like, this motherfucker blew up a police station. And then that's it. And then they, after that, I started to lose interest. Because it's like, okay, we'll cover this, but it's like, okay, he does the police station thing. He goes to prison. He gets out. They talk about him, his relationship issues or whatever. I didn't care about any of that. They kind of covered the murder thing at the end. That stuff kind of feels rushed to me.
That did rush.
Yeah, and then they're just like, well, he didn't do it, or he did do it, and then he died, and we don't really know what happened. And then they kind of roll credits. So it's like I feel like they have a really nice structured story up until the moment where they talk about the police station bombing, and then after that it kind of goes off the rails, and not in the good way that it had been going off the rails. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I did feel like that was rushed, like you said, because when I was watching it, I was like, wait a minute, that like what? Like, did he or didn't he? I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I mean, like, but I get why they focus, also on the relationships aspect because it's it's kind of like with the Chris Benoit thing. It's like, look, we know that what Chris Benoit did was monstrous, but how did that affect the other people around them? That's what people don't talk about. They just talk about that one individual, but it doesn't, like how does that affect everyone else around them? And you saw like what that did, and then you see what it does in this.
Yeah, and I mean, we're looking at this mostly. We're looking into his life through the lens of Tracy Edwards, who's his widow,
Oh,
and most of the and I think that's good because he, of course, has passed away, so he can't be there to give us the details. So he spent a lot of his home life with this person. She's probably the best person to give us real insight into what he was like when he wasn't around the boys, because that's he's going to act a certain way then, or when he was out committing these crimes. She's giving us a window into his home life, which is important for this. um, she was, of course, an exotic dancer. Johnny was like a bouncer, so they fell in love. uh, I kind of cracked up at that because I was just like, yeah, I can't see them making the Disney movie about that one. And I feel like that, I feel like this story has probably happened about 700,000 times. You're not the first stripper to fall for a bouncer. He's not the first bouncer to fall for a stripper.
well, I mean, that's just, but that's their story, like
I know. I know. I know. I know. Um,
it's not necessarily that it was meant to be this big thing. It was just that's you want to know how it happened. That's how it happened.
that's true. Yeah. I mean, they're just giving us the info here. Uh, so he was kind of when he broke into the WWF,
Hmm.
he was a jobber, plain and simple. And a lot of people that were watching the product around that time, that may be the only place that they know him from, because most of his prominence was either in the news for crimes he committed or in Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, you know me, I consume more wrestling than any of you, and I didn't know who the fuck he was.
Right. I knew who he was from, just barely. Like I knew that he was a job guy in WWF, and I knew that he was a big deal in Smoky Mountain, and that's pretty much the extent of kind of what I knew about him. And they tell a story. I was really happy to see Scott Demore in this.
Yes.
Um, he was great, and of course, he's big wig over there at Impact now, and he's doing his thing, and I'm glad that he's doing really well behind the scenes now. And he talks about that he used to be on the road with Johnny K9. He tells a story about him having his envelopes shorted, and Johnny went and held the promoter up by his throat and was choking him out and shaking him, and made him give him his money, which was hilarious to me because, it still happens today, but back then there was a lot of shady promoters out there that would do things like that.
Yeah. Before I go into that, here's what I gotta say about Scott Demore. If none of y'all are familiar with Scott Demore and you want to see some good stuff from him, go watch Impact Wrestling. But when it was TNA and when he was doing the Team Canada thing, that stuff was so good because that was when you introduced Bobby Roode, Eric Young, Petey Williams
I
as
was about
well.
to say, don't you dare leave out
Petey
the
Williams as
best.
well. Exactly. Like those guys, that was where they came in. And, normally when they do the Canadian or any type of, political whatever crap, I scoff at it a lot, but this was done in a very different way. And dude, it worked so well. I thought like that match that Petey had with AJ, Scott D'Amore is in that as well. Like he was just really good stuff. So if you're not familiar with that, go and check that out. That is my plug for him. And I love the fact that he got to do a lot of interview in this because he's actually doing really well with Impact Wrestling. I mean, some of the stuff is not very good on at times, but there is a lot of stuff that is good, and they're still around. They're still People are working for them. People are choosing places or people are choosing Impact Wrestling over other places. So, you
You
know,
know, I mean, Wade Adams clearly missed his calling. He was a little too late. He would have been imperfect for Team Canada.
he would have.
And, and I agree with you. I really, really hate in wrestling, and this is more, TNA of course did it because it worked so well, but this is totally a Vince thing, where it's like a foreigner can never be a good guy. A non-straight person can never be a good guy. We talked about that in the Canyon episode. It's like all these tropes that Vince, that kind of show you the way that Vince McMahon's mind works.
Yeah.
And I hate seeing that kind of stuff portrayed in wrestling. It's like, why can't if people think that like nationalism is a positive thing and that you should like be proud of your country and stuff, then why is it like, why are you automatically booing someone from a different country who's proud of their country? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
is do you think it's a good thing, or do you just like hate people that aren't from America? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's always struck me as being this really kind of vile thing that Vince perpetrates, right? And it has seeped down into wrestling fans, so that even on the indies, it becomes very difficult to book someone who is not from here, as a face, right? Because there's automatically in people's minds, I could tell you, we just talked about Wade Adams. I could tell you a story of somebody that is actually a smart mark came to a VPW event and they saw Wade Adams there, and they were like, I was really confused because this guy came out holding a Canadian flag, and then everyone cheered for him, and I was like, what part about that confuses you?
What?
Yeah, I mean that happened. That's a real thing. That the real story.
Yeah, and I hate it when they do that. This was done in a more tasteful way, though, I thought,
Right.
with Team Canada, and especially like when they joined up with Jeff Jarrett and stuff like that. And I could go into that another day. But yeah, I hate that stuff as well. And I think for the most part, wrestling has done a good job, though, in recent years. That's the type of stuff that I think that wrestling has done and continues to do a little bit a good job of erasing, because now it's like wrestling fans don't care about that as much. You have your casual wrestling fans, but like the really passionate wrestling fans, they don't care where you're from. If you're good in the ring, you're good in the ring, and that's what they want to see. Like Finn Balor, he's from Ireland, like
And
Becky
it's
Lynch.
like Finn Balor. What I love about Finn Balor is he's from Ireland, and it's not part of his gimmick at all.
Exactly. Becky Lynch.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a little bit of hers, but just a little bit. But with him, it's like it's not a part of his gimmick ever. If he would have come around 10 years earlier, he would have been the Irish guy.
Yeah.
And that's it. Or they probably wouldn't have hired him in the first place, actually,
Yeah.
because he's small.
Exactly.
So, a lot of people, tell these stories about how crazy he is. We get the story from Tracy Edwards talking about how he would answer the door. He would order pizza and then answer the door butt ass naked just to intimidate or mess with the pizza guy. Jim Cornette, Chris Jericho both talked about how he would roll up in the middle of the winter.
First of all, Jim Cornette.
Yeah. I mean, every time you see Jim Cornette's going to be in an episode. It's perfect. He was wearing the James Drake jacket in this one, the red jacket. Yeah. Anyway, so we get the story about him. He would show up. He's got the open top Jeep, middle of the winter, and he's got just the tank top on, and it's freezing outside. He would tell people to hit him for real in the ring. Because he wanted to get busted open like every night. He wanted it to look real. So this guy was a character, man, and he seems like he was a legitimate, like, fucking tough guy.
He does, but when you also talk to everyone, including Jim Cornette, he's also like this big lovable guy. I mean, like you saw them hanging out. It looked like he was a fun time guy. Like it's like, dude, this guy, seems like someone I can confide in, and stuff like that. And you heard like Jericho and Lance Storm. How cool was it to see Lance Storm as well, man?
Yeah, it was awesome to see Lance in this episode. And Jericho too talked about, hey, he was always a really fun guy to hang out with. It really seems like he kind of separated that tough guy part of himself from the, who he, I don't know, I don't want to say who he really was, but I would say he lived a double life. I think his persona in the ring is pretty close to what kind of persona he had with, some of these other people he got involved with.
Yeah.
In the criminal world. I love the story that Jim tells about the bottle, where he's trying to break the beer bottle over his head. And he tries it a couple times and it's not working, and he's got knots on his head, and then Cornette gimmicks the bottle, and then they do it again, and like the footage that they had of that interview was amazing, because like he breaks the bottle over his head and just immediately you just start to get the it was a really good effect for the camera. They couldn't have got it any better than that.
That was the good. That's what you call good stuff in wrestling. That's when like you have something really special and really good, and like you can build off of that. And they did build off of that. They had one of the biggest stars of all time come into the territory and want to put him over.
Yeah, I mean, so first Cornette has him beat Bob Armstrong like on his first night. Like he'd just come into the company.
Yeah.
And they have him go over on Bob Armstrong, who was a big star in the area. But then after all of this stuff, then they get Randy Savage coming in as a favor to Cornette. And just him showing up there gives the place a ton of legitimacy at this point in time, right? Or really at any point in time.
Yes.
But then it's like, oh, well, this guy seems like he's the real deal. I'm not coming back. I'm only going to be here the one night. Let me put him over. Anytime that happens in wrestling, huge amount of respect.
That's why Jim Cornette won't talk bad about Macho Man Randy Savage, because he's like, no, he was a professional. That's right. A professional. And Randy Savage, while crazy and characteristic as he was a professional in every sense of the word. You talk to anybody when it came to creative and stuff like that, he was willing to do whatever. I mean, think about this. If it hadn't been for Randy Savage, there would not be DDP Yoga.
That's true.
DDP would not be a household name. He was getting to that level, but it takes you have to have someone who's willing to dance with you and willing to make the story work in everyone's favor. And Randy Savage was that guy, and he did it wherever he went. In WCW, that's how Paige got over. And then right here, this guy who's not really known anywhere else, only known in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but Randy Savage, I could just see him now doing it. Ooh, why don't I go ahead and put him over? Yeah, he can just kind of cheat on me or something.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was, that fucking hit piece that A&E put together, notwithstanding.
Yeah, I hated that.
Yeah, fuck that shit. Anyway, it seemed like he was such a good, like, professional guy. Did a great job for Jim Cornette here. That match looked like it got over like Rover. I used to hate that saying, but now I just say it. So I can't get over it.
Might as well.
This is about the point in time where we start to get introduced to the two people that we see. There is a third guy here. I didn't catch his name, but he was boring to me. But there's two people that we kind of see the sort of crime aspect of this from. Lynn Eisner, who was a detective in the hometown of Johnny K9, and then Bill Dunphy, who was a journalist. And they both kind of talked about how in that area, especially when he was coming up, there was a lot of crime in that area. There's basically like mobsters, crime syndicates, and it was a low income area. So if you either moved away and got a better job, or you got into shit you weren't supposed to or didn't need to get into. And I grew up in a place that's kind of similar to that. Not probably not as heavy on the crime aspect, but it's like when you're from a town like that, you know that your options if you stay there are not good. You can either be poor, you can be a criminal, you can be both of those things, or you can move away.
Yeah. I totally get that. They also had someone who was in the gang that he was associated with.
Yeah, I didn't catch that guy's name.
I forgot his name. I didn't find him that boring. I couldn't remember his name or anything like that.
Yeah. So this is where we kind of start to get into the criminal aspects of it, and it seems like he kind of fell in with these people kind of when they talk about him going to jail the first time before he got into wrestling. Yeah. And Cornette talks about he had the True to the Crew tattoo on his stomach. And I just guess Cornette at this point in time was just a little naive to kind of how the criminal underworld works. But I'm like, that tattoo should have been your first red flag that maybe this guy was not completely on the up and up.
I mean, you would think, but then again, also Jim Cornette has a promoter mind also as well going, well, but hey, wait a minute. I've put a lot of energy into this guy. So right now I can't think about that,
Oh, I agree. I probably would have done the same thing. That being said, we kind of go forward here, and Tracy talks about how he was like a mob enforcer. So he was the guy who would, if you owed the mob money or the gang money or whatever, they would send him over and he would collect the money. And if you didn't want to pay it, then he would collect it harder.
Yeah.
Until he got the money, and that's what he did. And I'm like, I imagine most of these people, unless they just didn't have it, probably went ahead and ponied it up when he showed up.
Probably, or else, that's why they're not in this episode talking about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't know how many things this guy got away with when he was doing this stuff, right? When he was the mob enforcer. But this kind of escalates. He falls in with the Satan's Choice gang after this.
Oh my God, what a freaking name. Like, hey, let's just not be inconspicuous at all. Let's just make it known right off the bat. Hey, we're a criminal organization. We're Satan's Choice.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
what the fuck?
This is apparently a very, very violent biker gang.
I know deathcore bands and metal bands that have more subtle hints of that stuff than this biker gang has.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It was just like, dude, Sons of Anarchy is not like that gang is not even like as obvious as this one was. Like when I heard it, I was just like, wait a minute. That's the name of this? Oh my God.
Who the fuck calls your organization Satan's Choice? Like the actual Church of Satan is not as like outright.
Exactly. And this is a criminal organization, and they're thinking, oh no, we're never gonna get caught for that.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Like the FBI doesn't immediately go, oh, well, they're called Satan's Choice. We could probably look into this.
Right. So this kind of escalates where some of the him and his associates in the Satan's Choice biker gang are trying to get into the Solid Gold strip club in '96. Yes. However, because the gang was known for being violent, they were not allowed to get in. So instead of just being like, fuck it, we'll go to somewhere else, they decide they're going to bomb the place.
Oh, good.
However, Once they get there and they get ready to go, they change their minds and they end up bombing the police station.
So, from what I understand in this episode, that's what Johnny K9 thought was he was going to blow up the strip club, which of course that makes it better, right?
Right. Imagine telling the officers that when they're like, well, officer, listen, I came here to bomb a strip club. It's not my fault that that's not what happened.
That's what I felt like. Like I was just like, the whole excuse is terrible.
Yeah, I didn't come here to bomb the police station. I mean, not at all, sir. That's
He
just
probably-
that's just ludicrous.
but that's what they said happened. And I'm just sitting there just like, oh my God, these people are idiots. Like dude, cocaine, like a wise man once said, cocaine's a hell of a drug.
I don't know about wise, but yes.
We differ on that one, but that's a different story. But no, man, like when I heard all of that, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And so yeah, I didn't know what to think at that point. I was like, well, obviously he's gonna get caught because nobody blows up a police station and literally gets away with it.
Man, let me tell you, I mean, can you imagine how that plays out in court? Like the prosecutor's like, yes, Mr. K9, did you arrive at the police station with the intent to bomb it that night? And then he'd be like, no, we were there to bomb the strip club.
No, man, we were there to bomb the strip club. That's what we were there to bomb. That's what he has made everyone made it sound like.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, of course, like you said, he goes down for this. He gets 33 months in prison, which honestly to me seems like a pretty light sentence, I guess, just because like nobody died, you know, like they didn't kill anyone.
God, how they didn't, I'll never know. I mean, because
Well, I think they did it while the place was mostly empty. It seems like it was at night.
yeah, it was like it had to have been like in the wee hours of the morning or something like that.
Yeah. So apparently she divorced him. Tracy divorced him while he was in prison. And then they kind of tried to rekindle everything after that. After he got out. But he was arrested again in 88 for supposedly for another murder, for a double murder.
Yeah.
Lynn and Frank Gilbank. And this is where the episode to me kind of goes off the rails because it's like, okay, Tracy says he didn't kill him, but she was defending him this whole time, right? Like, you know, she was like, well, he was such a nice guy, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but he beat up people for the mob and he blew up a police station. I mean, I think maybe your judgment of what a nice guy is might be a little skewed.
It might be, but at the same time, you listen to the other, like you listen to Chris Jericho, Jim Cornette, and Lance Storm, and even Scott Demore. Like you know, they were like, I have to see it to believe it because they did not know this guy. They were like they did not see this side of him. They never saw like a murder bouncer Satan's choice biker gang dude, you know, like they saw
Right.
this big huge teddy bear guy that was just awesome to be around in the locker room and was for the most part pretty good in the ring for what he was asked to do and stuff like that. And so like, you know, that's why that's where the conflicting, you know, conscience comes into play because it's like, you know, they're like, yes, that is wrong, but we didn't know that guy. We can't tell you about that guy.
And you know, my thing too is it's like this has happened with a few wrestlers over the years is if you're good at professional wrestling, then obviously you can work. And what that term means when you say that you can work is they're talking about the actual art of working someone in terms of pro wrestling. So making them believe that you are that character and that you're doing these things. some people are working in the ring, and some people are working all the rest of the time. And I think this guy was working all the rest of the time. I think in the ring, he was who he really is. And I think the rest of the time, he was putting on a facade to kind of, so that, yeah, I mean, when the cops come around asking, it's, oh yeah, this guy would never do any of this shit, that kind of thing.
But can you blame the wrestlers for feeling the way that they felt about him?
No, because it's the same way it is with like cops or doctors or whatever. There's this camaraderie amongst the boys, right? And no, I don't blame them at all, because their first instinct is going to be to defend one of their own.
Yeah.
And other than Tracy, I didn't see anybody in this episode being like, yeah, he definitely didn't do it. You know what I mean? And even the cop kind of talks about, Detective Eisner kind of talks about how Tracy can't really be trusted when it comes to this dude because she's kind of covering for him.
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's again where conflicting views come into play, because it's like I can't blame her for that because she did love this guy. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that is good judgment. I'm just saying I can't blame her in a lot of instances.
Right, and I mean the thing is too. I mean, a lot of the time, when other than not for the double murder, but
Yeah,
anything,
exactly.
any crimes that he committed while the two of them were married, she couldn't be compelled to testify anyway. So because of spousal privilege, so it wouldn't matter. I imagine the detectives probably interviewed her extensively, and she probably did not give them anything at all, which does
Yeah.
not surprise me.
And again, this is why I brought up, the Chris Benoit episode. Like, remember, Chris Benoit did this horrible thing, and that's all people can talk about. But you talk to, but I mean, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, Chavo Guerrero. Like, they didn't know that guy. They were like, we can't tell you about that guy because we never saw that guy. That was not who my best friend was. Type of thing.
Right.
And so it's the same thing here. It's like the wrestlers not necessarily want to defend him or anything. It's just they're just like, I mean, we don't want to defend him, but we don't want to condemn him because we don't know that guy. We we
Right.
we, we didn't see him. Like, they could have never pictured him being a murderer. I don't think any of us, like, when I was watching this episode, I didn't think that like I could have pictured him as a murderer. And then they said the word murder. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, like I said, earlier, the episode gets kind of dicey around this point in time. It
Yeah, it
gets
really is.
kind of difficult to really follow because it's like they very quickly go through, well, okay, and he's suspected for this double murder, and you don't get a lot of background on it, and then,
What
you
I
know,
got was they just didn't have enough to convict him.
right, and he was charged, and he passed away before they even got to actually him being tried in court for it, I believe.
Yeah.
Because he ended up dying at the age of 53. It's believed it was a heart attack brought on by his lifestyle, but his widow says it's due to the guards macing him in prison, and that his lungs on the inside were scarred. And Jericho mentions there's a lot of controversy surrounding his death.
Yeah, there clearly is, because it's like, I heard like 7 different ways that he died basically at the end
Right.
there. Like, I was like,
Everyone they asked had a different story, kind of.
exactly. Sounds kind of like Herb Abrams.
Yeah, this has some Herb Abrams elements to it for sure, because you've got this guy who's this kind of larger than life character for real, and it of course has disastrous ends. And you did mention cocaine earlier, so Herb Abrams has got to come to mind every time you hear about cocaine and wrestling. So
Yeah, that might change after a certain episode airs. That's coming up.
that's true.
Spoiler.
I mean, yeah, there's some promoters. There's some promoters on the indie circuit right now that get into the cocaine pretty often, but we're not here to talk about that. Going. This is kind of where this one fades out, right? What do you think about this episode overall, man?
First of all, I think it's kind of funny that you have Jericho interviewing and narrating.
There's a couple episodes in this season kind of like that.
And
Yeah.
like, I love how every time he shows up, it's other people that they're just like, "I'm Jim Cornette, I'm Chris Jericho," and I'm just like, "We know." Like, but then again, I think you have to do that. I think they do a good job of that.
Well, you got to
Overall,
remember they have an audience that's not wrestling fans.
that is true. That is very true. And what I like that they do is that they introduce themselves, but it's not the, oh, I've done this in wrestling, I've done that. It's they're like, this is how I know this person, and this is how I can comment on this,
Right.
basically. And I like that. But overall, man, I mean, I'll be honest, it was one of my least favorites. I thought that I thought at times it was funny, and then at times it was anger, I guess, or just what the fuck kind of thing. So it like I said, it's kind of like it's basically a combination for me. It is basically Herb Abrams and Chris Benoit type episode
Yeah.
combined. Basically, that's what I kind of got away from this. Again, I feel bad for the wrestlers and the people that only knew the good side of him because again, I feel like in a lot of these episodes, that's what these guys get put into awkward situations because they're like, I'm not saying that I'm defending him. It's more like I'm saying that I can't tell you about that. I don't know that guy, kind of thing. And I get what you're saying. He probably was working a lot of people. I don't know. That it's
And
a
I don't
very
know either. I'm speculating. You know.
exactly. That's a very slippery slope. And that's the thing about pro wrestling. That's what makes Dark Side of the Ring so compelling as over a lot of other stories that you hear, that would be like this because it's like that's almost the point. Where does the character stop and the human being is also there? Like where's the line basically? And a lot of the times, as you say, there isn't in wrestling, you know?
Right.
So it's like, I don't know. But for the most part, I mean, this was, I think, I this and the Luna Vachon episode that we're going to cover were like my least favorites so far, but still pretty interesting in a lot of ways, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I would say that this one was interesting. There's a couple holes in it, but I
Yeah,
mean, it's still Vice's Dark Side of the Ring. It's still good. It's still interesting, and I like the way that they put it all together. And it's like you said. I mean, you know, it, you want to come on and talk about your experiences with the person, but you don't want to Tommy Dreamer yourself and go, "Oh no, they'd never do that," you know. And
well,
and that's where he got into hot water.
yeah, well, that and well, let's be fair to everyone. A lot of these interviews all of these interviews have been filmed way before that episode. So
Well, that's true, but also like, the reason he got in so much shit was it was like, okay, that he was asked about the Ric Flair thing, about the testimony from the stewardess, and he said,
yeah,
"Oh well, Rick definitely didn't do that," and it's like you're defending him, but you're also admitting that you were not back there. You didn't see it happen, and
yeah,
yet you're saying it didn't happen, and that's why he got into some shit.
yeah, and he did, but like even I get what he was saying. He was saying that like, look, like you're painting Ric Flair as a bad guy kind of thing, and I don't know. Again, that's a slippery slope. And that's what Dark Side of the Ring, I think, comes and forces you to do, basically.
And what he really should have said was, "I've never known Rick to do anything like that," and then he should have left it at that. And I think he would have been fine. But he had to go full tilt into, well, Rick definitely didn't do that shit. And I'm like, but you weren't there, so
He's also
you
great
know.
friends with Ric Flair.
Right, exactly. And it's like, Yeah, hopefully that episode did not mean that we're never going to get Ric Flair on Dark Side of the Ring. I feel like we won't, but that sucks because I know he's got a ton of stories to tell. But I don't want to go back down that bandwagon. I'm not here to shit on Ric Flair. We did cover that whole episode. You guys go and check it out. Like you said, we got 3 episodes left. We have Luna Vachon, we have XPW, and then of course we have the one that I personally am looking forward to the most, which is the steroid trial. I think it's going to be a big deal.
Yes. I'm very much looking forward to that. Can I add one more point to that though?
Yeah, sure.
This is why I get so confused with wrestling at times, because you know me, I watch anything wrestling. I can do it all with wrestling. Yes, even WCW 2000 and XPW and FMW and even the bad stuff that happens. I just love pro wrestling. But when I hear something like what Ric Flair did, okay, so does that mean that every time now I want to go and watch WCW or watch an old NWA episode and Ric Flair's cutting a promo and I love it, and watching one of his matches, like I watched the match that he had with Terry Funk after we did the FMW thing because it's just so freaking good. But do I need to feel guilty now watching that? Am I supporting someone who did a horrible violent act like that? Or not a horrible violent act, I should say, but like an inappropriate act like that, like that's where I get like, and that's where I feel like Dark Side of the Ring does. It forces me to do that a lot of the times.
I think that just like with Benoit, right? I think you have to, and I'm not equating what he did to what Benoit did, by any means, but I think just like that, it's like you have to be able to separate a person's who they are in real life from their body of work. I can still watch a Benoit match and enjoy it because he's one of the best to ever do it.
I can still watch a Ric Flair promo and watch his matches because, I mean, let's face it, he was one of the best to ever do it.
Right. So I mean, no, I don't think so. I think and I think more stuff might come to light on the Ric Flair thing. Here's the thing about that whole situation, and we'll put it to bed. But we don't know because I'm gonna say what Tommy Dreamer should have said. We don't know because we weren't fucking there. And that's it. And I think that if this happened to multiple people, like if people had this happen to them and that and they were put in a situation like was described in that episode by Ric Flair, by all means they should come forward and they should be heard. But unless that happens, or until that happens, or whatever, then people are gonna have their opinions either way. And like I said, I wasn't there. RVD seems to sure as hell think that it happened. At the very least, it sounds like he made that lady very uncomfortable. Yeah, and I mean it's an incredibly unfortunate thing if it did happen. Once again, though, I can separate their work from who they are as a person. Yeah, and you have to do that if you're gonna be in pro wrestling, because I mean there's a lot of people you're not gonna be able to fucking watch. Like, I mean, obviously, like, you're gonna have to take out all the wrestling in the 80s and half the 90s if you don't want to watch Hogan.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and I can tell you right now, I want to watch Hogan. I liked that stuff back in the day, so, and I still like it.
Yeah, I don't like any of the. I probably like maybe 4 or 5 tops Hulk Hogan matches, but I loved him as Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood Hogan was amazing. I mean, I think it's one of the best gimmicks of all time. I mean, it's top 10 for sure.
The whole NWO thing.
Right, but I mean, he was like his own thing. Like the way he worked within the faction, you know, it was like, it was very clear that he's the leader. And it's like you had the NWO, but then you had Hollywood Hogan. And like just the way they built him and the way that it all worked, I loved it. But anyway, we could go on and on. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us for this review. And like I said, we've got 3 episodes left in season 3. We're going to get to them as quick as our schedules allow. Caleb, thanks for joining me once again. And this, of course, you all know it's coming. Here it is. This has been an Evolved Review.